Okay, you're recording. Thank you very much, Mr. Haynes. A wonderful introduction, and certainly we want to thank all of our participants for tuning in this evening. We had a wonderful evening last evening, and we want to just continue on with that, realizing that this is a new item for referee training. In the past, we knew nothing about basketball knowledge, and now we're implementing both basketball knowledge and to a smaller extent, table officiating. So you get the whole of basketball refereeing approach as an official. That said, did we get a video for the player party? We get that video? No? Okay, I'm gonna just turn it over now to Jennifer.
Hi, good night. Freddie, you want the video you're asking is a clip of the Canadian versus Dominican Republic team. That's the video you want?
Yeah, do you have that?
Let me
Can you play it?
Yeah, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it in the chat and put the link in the chat, and persons can just click on the link and they could watch the video and come back.
Yeah. What we wanted for you to do is stop it and show them the 5 out and the 3 out and all that kind of stuff. That's why.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. You can stop it anytime.
But then I would
show
have
the defensive patterns and all that kind of stuff. Can you do that? You want to try? Try it. See what happens. If it doesn't work, then you go straight into your presentation.
Okay. So I guess I would have to share my screen then.
Yes, please.
Okay.
What's going on here? I think I have a virus.
Is anyone seeing my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not up yet.
Share computer still. Let's see. I actually don't know how to do that.
Okay, I guess we could come back to it by that time. Patrick will have it for us. You know, just continue on with your presentation.
All righty. Again, good night, everyone. And continuing from last night, today, I'm going to talk about creating contact. That's the first topic that I'm going to talk about tonight. All right, so it's the same manual from yesterday. So I don't know if persons were able to save it or to go into their history and get the link so that you can follow, because it's not up on the screen. Or do I need to put it in the chat? I'll just put it in chat again. So just give me a second, please, and I'll put it in chat again so persons can follow while I discuss stuff. So just give me a second, please.
While Jennifer is getting set up, we want to remind you to kindly pay attention to the characteristics of the offensive patterns. 5 out, 4 out, 1 in, 3 out, 2 in. Also, pay attention to the full court trapping defense, and the reasons, the trapping areas on the court. Full court trapping defense, reasons. To reduce the amount of time the offense have to create a good shot.
Yes.
Okay, you good? You good now, Jenny? We good? I can hardly hear you.
Oh yeah, Freddie, give me 2 more minutes.
Okay, great.
You would have been doing the same thing that he did yesterday, so.
Okay, another reason is to create an easy shot through turnovers, to create the tempo of the game, particularly when a team is behind towards the end of the game. Full court trapping defense again. Defense receive an opportunity because the offensive point guard is off the court or the team is smaller, and they take advantage of that. Trapping areas, remember those trapping areas? That's the corners. And if you remember, the corners were shaded in yellow. And the backcourt sideline shaded in blue. And the front court sideline near the half court. From an offensive perspective, I think we started out with the 5 out. We dealt with some of the characteristics of the 5 out. Of course, all players, and some of the characteristics of the 5 out. All players play on the perimeter. And this playing on the perimeter causes the defense to close out, long close out. There we go. Continuing, must remember in the 5 out, the corner 3 is particularly important as the shooting percentage from this position is higher than at the wing or the top of the key, mainly because it's a shorter distance as well. And what it does too, it forces the defensive players to go to the split line. That's the 5 out. Another characteristic of the 5 out, are you ready now, Jenny?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, let me turn that back over to you then.
Hey, Freddie, just I have the video ready too. So I don't know if you, Jennifer, if you want me to run this before, or if you just want to go straight into your presentation.
Freddie, just want to continue with the video then?
Yeah, continue with the video.
Okay, well, go ahead. Continue with the video.
Can you control the video, Jenny?
No, Patrick is controlling the video, as far as I understand.
Good.
John McKean. Tough decision, left his feet. And numbers here. Oh, takes off. No points.
Fast break right after the shot. Continue, Patty. I'll tell you when this is over.
13 minutes. There you see Solano with the little spice on the dunk. Then the pull-up 3. Solano, aggressive.
Stop right there. If you notice, you have basically a what? The red team, 4 out and 1 in. And the defenders are really playing. You have 3 defenders who are playing on the split line. One near the semicircle, one just below the free throw line, and then the other one is just above the free throw line. But the red team basically is spread behind the 3-point area, and the one person, number 44, is making a move to the hoop. So that's a good offensive pattern, 4-1, and then of course a defensive pattern right there where the players are really playing the split line. Continue. Continue.
Offensively as Nicholson gets inside and one opportunity. Andrew Nicholson. Solano. 2-man action with Roberts. Skips it over. Catch and shoot. Mendoza for 3 in international basketball. Surprise teams.
Stop right there. Okay. So what you have basically now is a 3-2. All right? And what you have is number 33 who wants to give help to number 2 who's on the ball. But he's not in a good position to give help. And then you have this player, I think right here in the center, right below the free throw line, who's on the split line, who steps away and is looking to his right. All right? And then number 15, red 15, his eyes is also on red 15, and then the white player is watching number 2 red for any cut to the basket. Continue. Watch what happens.
Always make it. Here's Kajan McKean. What a strong take to the back.
But he was not fast enough coming over, even though he had his eyes over there. He was not fast enough, so he could not close out on that reversal play. Continue, please.
Lay in.
Stop right there. Stop. Okay, before you drive, you actually have 5 out. Okay, great, right there. You can see now a 5 out. The white team, 4, 5. All of them are 5 out behind the 3-point line. You have a defender on the ball, and you have one person who's getting set to set up a screen for the guy with the ball. But you have that 3 down in that deep in that corner. 3, number 4, and the next guy on the opposite side, deep in the corner, looking for the ball for a shot. But on the opposite side of the ball, you have 2 guys who are on the split line, right there between the basket and the free throw, watching number 4 and watching number 5. But what that's going to do, that's going to draw a couple defenders towards the ball. Continue. Continue.
Hold on.
Sweato, kick out to Lees, who hits the 3. The scramble drill and Scrub knocks down the 3. Oh, the lob. And Best throws it down. Athleticism for days. Here's Montero. Dangerous pass. Fortunately, Solano catches it. And Sweato elevates for 2. Mendoza. Here's Delgado. Goes right at Nicholson again and finishes off the glass. As at the World Cup qualifiers, averaged about 6 points per game. So the 13 somewhat unexpected. Oh, no foul, but a 3-pointer knocked down by Montero. And then Montero with the answer. I guess he did just kick his feet out and land a long distance. It's about Haynes.
The defense is not closing out quick enough. The defense is not closing out quick enough. They're satisfied to just sit into a 1-2-2 defense or 1-3-1 defense or 2-2-1 defense, and they're not closing out. Hence, you have so many 3-point shots. Let's continue for the next 30 seconds or so.
They just replaced it. And at least Scrub wide open. Can't do that. Back-to-back 3-pointers. Bill Haynes finds Scrub on the back door and one. What a find and a nice patient finish from Scrub. Even though they're supposed to finish at the top of Group C, still a lot of work to do. Here's Roberts, McIntosh.
Oh goodness, you could go back. Okay, what Jennifer is gonna get in now to some of that low post and some screening right there. All right, in the low post, the big players really back the defender into a position and is getting ready to receive the ball. But notice the defense. All right, and the perimeter is wide open. Because of that one person, that dominant player, all right, you have these two guys still playing around the ring. And then this guy here, on the opposite side of the ball, in red, all right, he sees a player that is open. That's that dangerous tree. And of course, you can't see the other players up here. And so continue playing. Continue.
No, they're supposed to finish at the top of Group C. Still a lot of work to do. Here's Roberts, McIntosh, and one big-time shot from Roberts. And now Canada back up 3. Big-time shot.
Continue with our presentation. Thank you very much. Any comments? Any comments? Okay, good. Pretty much got it. These are the things that a referee got to be looking for in terms of basketball knowledge. Continue, please.
All right. Thanks, Freddie, for allowing us to see some of the things that, we discussed last night. All right, so creating contact. The first one is blocking out. It is the rebounding contest. Rebounding is not simply a matter of which a player can jump or reach higher. Instead, the rebounding contest is likely to involve a high level of contact between players, specifically with defenders being taught to make contact. This will be particularly so when a defender is against a taller or more athletic player. The key to blocking out is see your opponent. When a shot is taken, the defender should turn to face or see their opponent. Balance. Players must have good balance with knees bent. Contact with your opponent. The defender must move to establish contact with their opponent. This should be done using an arm bar. This is kept close to the body within the cylinder, so it requires moving the feet. A defender that is on the split line may be a significant distance from the opponent. In this instance, step to the side of the key so that if their opponent moves to rebound, contact is made there. Into the basket. After making initial contact, the player should then pivot to face the basket, again keeping contact with the opponent. Hands up and rebound. One of the most common mistakes players make is having their hands down. Hands should be just above shoulder height, elbows out, which makes the player wider and harder to get around. All of this is within your cylinder. Potentially, there will be 5 separate rebounding contests after each shot, and although they are in a relatively small area of the court, usually in the keyway, the angles of each contest are likely to be different. Accordingly, it can be difficult for referees to adjudicate all rebounding contests. There may also be contact with the shooter, particularly after the shot has been released. Having regard to how players are taught to block out, the referees need to consider: was the initial contact by the defender made from within their cylinder? Was the offensive player in the air when contact was made? Does the defensive player attempt to move the offensive player after making contact, typically pushing into the player? Did the offensive player make any contact with the defender, particularly pushing into their back? if contact was made, was it from within the offensive player's cylinder? These are all things that us as referees need to consider. And you have to consider all of these things in a split second. Because if you need to blow your whistle and call either a offensive or defensive foul, it has to obviously be within a split second. The next one is screening. A screen is where an offensive player, first off, everybody understood what was said just now about the boxing out and rebounding?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody following? Okay, good. All right, so screening. A screen is where an offensive player stands in the path of a defensive player to stop that defender from moving to defend a second offensive player. The purpose of the screen is to create contact. Sometimes that contact will be the defensive player running into the stationary screener. However, at times there will be contact as both screener and the defender are moving. There are 4 broad types of screens: the down screen, the up screen, the back screen, and the ball screen. Screening brings 4 players close together in one point on the court, and the vision angles vary depending upon how the defenders cut and move. There are numerous different options of each screen. The down screen. A down screen is set by a player that is moving towards the baseline and is usually set on the side of the court opposite the ball. So in the diagram, after 3 cuts using the screener then also presents an option to receive a pass. And in the diagram, here are 2 moves to the basket. Typically, the screener has their back to the person with the ball when setting the screen. So in the diagram, 2 at the top of the 3-point line would go down and set the pick on 3's defender, and then 3 comes off to the ball and 2 rolls to the basket. A down screen can be used between post players or between perimeter players. This perimeter screen differs from the previous one as it is set higher on the court. Basically the same concept. 5 walks the player in, 4 comes down, stationary, 5 runs the defender off of the screen. The role of the screener is to move to wherever the defender is, not simply a spot on the floor. For example, the defender, X3, may be on a split line, meaning that the screen will be set in the peak. So again, like I mentioned last note, seeking out the defender. So here in this diagram, 2 seeks out the defender, X3, to set the screen on that person.
Question.
Sure.
When setting a screen, what is the legal distance the defender is allowed to set that screen on the offensive player?
This is with the ball or without the ball? The defender with the ball.
Well, I know the principle of time and distance doesn't apply with the player with the ball, but if you bring in a screen, the distance applies, right?
Right. So the key things in setting the screen, like you said, is time and distance. But you can't like literally rush onto the player. The offensive player who is setting the screen, the one who is receiving the screen needs to set up the screen first. So that's why you would see players walk down, the offensive player walk down like into the key if they're gonna receive the screen to set it up so that their fellow offensive player can be stationary, all within their cylinder, and then the offensive player receiving the screen will run their defender off that screen. You understand?
Yeah, I understand, but what I was asking is
not necessarily set distance like a meter or 2 meters or 5 centimeters.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so however, if 3 is a good outside shooter, this is the offensive player, the defensive 3 may be positioned closer to them so that the screen will be set outside of the key. Referees accordingly need to be aware of where defenders are positioned to anticipate where the screen and contact may occur. There are many different movements that can be made off of a screen, and they are usually directed by what the defender does. In the second diagram, here 3 makes a straight cut as the defender of 3 also goes over the top of the screen. As 3 has cut high, the offensive player 2 moves towards the basket. However, if the defender of 3 is behind 3, as they made the cut off the screen, 3 will curl to the basket and 2 will cut high. If the defender of 3x3 gets in front of 3, as they move to cut over the top of the screen, 3 will then change direction and cut towards the basket, which this is now called a backdoor cut. 2 will initially maintain their position to remain in the way of the defender of 3, but will then cut high. X3 may also cheat underneath the screen, anticipating that where the offensive player will cut. In this instance, 3 moves towards the screen and then makes a flare cut away from the screen. The screener turns a step towards X3. The back screen and the up screen. A back screen is set by a player that is stepping away from the basket and is generally set as the ball is moving away from the player for whom the screen is set. The screen is set from behind the defensive player who will usually not have vision of the screener, and accordingly, the screener should give the defender more space to be able to avoid contact, which is the time and distance. A particular screen is an up screen where the screener is stepping up the floor in contrast to of a down screen. Typically, a back screen or up screen is set by a post player for a perimeter player that is moving towards the basket. However, it can also be used by a perimeter player moving to the perimeter. So like many times you would see that one of the post players would set a back screen for like the point guard. Normally that's how some of the plays would start. The point guard will pass the ball either side, the post player will come up and set a back screen, and the point guard would cut off of that screen and run into the key. If they aren't open, they would normally run out to either corner of the court. A ball screen. A ball screen is simply where a player screens the defender who is guarding the player with the ball. It may be set before the person has dribbled or can be set while they are dribbling. After the dribbler uses the screen, the screener will often roll and move to the basket. This creates a lot of contact, which continues for several steps. Ball screens are also commonly set in the middle of the court, with the screener again rolling to the basket. Sometimes the screener will pop or move to the perimeter. Dribble handoff, which is another type of screen. A similar offensive movement to a ball screen is a dribble handoff, where a player moves past the player that has the ball to receive the ball. while their defender moves into the teammate. This is often done with a dribbler moving towards their teammate and then coming to a stop and holding the ball at their hip so that the teammate may grab it and then run past. Obviously, well dribbled. A handoff.
Hey, Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. I just want to take a break here. Are you sharing anything?
The like I said earlier, I put the link in the chat.
Okay, so everyone will just follow on their own. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but if you want to, you can also use that link and put it up on the screen. But yesterday, persons were not really complaining, but the screen was fuzzy, so they had a difficult time reading what was on the screen. That's why I put it in the chat so persons could pull it up for themselves.
Okay, that's fine. Continue.
Right, so a handoff can also be done when the person with the ball is stationary. Example, a post player and a teammate runs past them. Right, defending off ball screens. There are several methods used to defend an off-ball screen. X3 goes over the screen in the diagram 2. X3 goes over the screen, attempting to create enough space for them and the offensive player to both move past the screen. The defender will often push the cutter with an arm bar or their hip to help make room. The screener's defender may also step so that they are in the way of the cutter, which is called showing or showing your number. A second method is for X3 to go under, moving behind both the screener and X2. This is in diagram, the third diagram. Again, X2 will show or help delay the cutter. Similarly, X3 may go through, where X2 steps away from the screener to create a gap for X3 to move behind the screener to get to the cutter more quickly. When under or through is used, the cutter may flare cut and 2 may rescreen. So that's why when you, excuse me, are playing, you would always hear or see players like step away to let players go through or pull their defenders through screens or, you know, things like that to help them to be quicker on the move. And they always keeping a lot of noise is why people keep saying to talk so that, you know, you can set a screen on left side, screen left, screen right. The defender may say coming through, going under, coming over, you know, just to help out one another during the game. Finally, X3 or X2 may switch and change who they are defending. This can be very effective to put pressure on the cutter as X2 is in a good position to move into their path. However, 2 may seal X3, making it difficult for a defender to establish position. So as opposed to fighting over, under, or through the screen, if you know that you are late or you can't get there, or the person is a good shooter, and you know the 2 defenders are within the same range in terms of height and ability and stuff, you know, you would tell one another switch. So you would switch who you're defending. So whoever is on top or below would cover whoever is coming off of the screen. Finally, switching is mostly done when the 2 offensive players, like I just said, are in similar size. Otherwise, it can create a mismatch for our defenders. However, some teams will also do it automatically when there's limited time left on the clock. Defending ball screens. Everybody's understanding so far? Following?
Yeah, we're following.
Yes, we are.
Okay, awesome. Okay, defending ball screens. X1 will usually adjust position so that 1 must use a ball screen, denying any dribble to the baseline. So this is the first diagram. Right, so in this diagram, the defender 1 is pushing the offensive player 1 towards the middle of the court. X1 will, excuse me, X1 will also usually use the arm bar on the hip of the dribbler, trying to force enough room for both players to go over the screen. X5 may show their numbers, however, will usually also keep some contact with the screener. X1 may also go through a gap created by X5, stepping away from the screener and going behind the screener. So you see in diagram 2, X5 creates some space between him and the offensive player, and the defender 1 comes through that space. This is usually only done when 1 is not a good perimeter shooter. Correct. X1 may also go under the screen with X5 showing their numbers. Again, this is unlikely to be done if 1 is a good shooter. Because it creates space. Switching is used by some teams, particularly if the screener and dribbler are similarly sized players. A switch can create 2 mismatches for the defense, with a big defender defending a dribbler and a guard defending a big, which would have been the screener. Particularly when there is limited time on the clock, a switch may be used to prevent an easy shot. Teams will also double team the dribbler. This is diagram, the second diagram here, with X5 stepping onto their path, and X1 move over the top of the screen. This may be a hard show when X5 stays with the dribbler for 1 or 2 dribbles, or can be double teamed where the 2 defenders pressure the ball. Right, so the defender 5 will hedge on the screen to prevent, a shot, make it difficult, make the offensive player do something different other than shoot coming off the screen. On a ball screen, the screener often cuts hard to the basket, particularly when the screener's defender either shows hard or looks to double team. To combat this, the defensive team will often rotate a 3rd defender across to defend the big, which can create a mismatch. This often creates significant contact in the keyway. Right, so 5 sets the screen in the last diagram. 5 sets the ball screen on 1 and rolls towards the basket, and the defender for the offensive player 3 comes and shows in the middle to prevent like an easy layup. Low post battle. The low post or block is an area where there is considerable contact from both the offensive and defensive player. The block is on the side of the keyway near where the rectangle is located. The offensive post player may also step to the short corner approximately halfway between the key and the 3-point line. Excuse me. Right, so in the diagram, you see the 2 bluish purplish dots. The one on the key is the block, and the one in the middle is the short corner. The defender also attempts to stop the offensive player from getting to the post area and may push with their hips, shoulders, and arm bar, or with their hands. However, it is wrong to assume that any contact that occurs has been initiated by the defender. Offensive players will initiate contact to get position to receive the ball. Typically, offensive players will attempt to step across the foot of the defender and then face the passer. They will sit on the leg of the defender and use their arms to create an area for the passer to throw to. So this is how they get position. They step across, get low, and raise their hand or put a target for the ball to be passed to them. If the offensive player cannot get a front foot, they will often step into the defender, contacting an arm bar to the chest, and then reverse pivot again to have the defender on their back with arms high to clear a passing area.
Hold on. What page are you on?
121.
All right, thanks.
Right, so this is basically just, you know, trying to fight in the post to get position. You walk them in and you spin, pivot, and then you do the same thing. Sit on their knees, put a target for the pass. The offensive player will use their arms to help establish their position, often knocking their opponent's arms out of the way. Typically, if the defender's arms is high, shoulder height, the offensive player will knock it up. Once the defender's arms is low, waist, chest height, the offensive player will swim over, pushing the arm down. Contact in the low post is frequent, and often both offense and defense are moving, which makes it important for the officials to see the gap. Like I was saying yesterday, make sure, especially in the post, the lead and the trail have to see the spaces between the two players so that they can correctly adjudicate the contact situation. The position of an official will need to take, the position that the official will need to take to see the gap will be influenced by the position that the defender adopts to defend the low post area. All right, X5 may play high, close to the free throw line of the post player. Often they will keep 1 foot behind the post player and 1 foot in front of them. To make a successful pass, one tends to move closer to the baseline. Alternatively, X5 may play on the low side, close to the baseline of the post player, again, usually with 1 foot behind and 1 foot in front of them. All right, so you now play them to the side, and you have your arms up and your passing lane. In this situation, one will tend to move up the court to have a successful passing angle. X5 may also play from behind the post player, which may concede a pass into them, but gives maximum one-on-one protection to defend any move to the basket. So these are the 3 ways that the defender can defend a post player. You either play baseline side, you either play high side, or you play directly behind the player. X5 may also deny the post player by standing in front of them, which they may do facing the passer or facing the post player. The defense is not usually adopted unless there is a defender on the low split line to prevent any lob pass. So high side, low side, directly behind or in front of the player. Many teams will also double team the low post player as they catch the ball. If X5 was on the high side, the double team tends to come from the low split line. So in the diagram in the middle, the offensive player 5 is post up. There, his defender is playing high side, and the help comes from 2, who is on the split side. So who's on the split line, and he will come to the low side. X3 then rotates down the key to help the helper. So X2 help X5, X3 has to help X2.
I have a question. When defending the post player, the defender is allowed to put his armbar on the player, whether it's either of the positions, whether you're playing them on the high side, from behind, or from the base?
Yeah, you're allowed to have an armbar.
Okay, good. Just double checking.
Okay. Right, if X5 defends the post player from the low side, the team is most likely to come from the high side, the high split line, with X2 remaining in the low split line. Right, so x5 is on the low side, so the help will come from x3 on the high side. Once the post player receives the ball, they have several options. Face the basket, either with a forward or reverse pivot, which is usually done if the defender has stepped off, leaving space between the defender and the offensive player. Use a drop step, either to the baseline or to the middle, where the player will pivot on one foot and step past the defender. If the defender is playing high side, the post player will step with the foot closest to the baseline. The post player will often then use a power dribble, where they take one bounce and either bring their feet together or jump further into the key. A drop step is usually used if the defender is playing to either low or high side and is close enough that the post player can step past them. Forward spin move, where the post player pivots 180 degrees to step past the defender and to be moved into the basket. This is most successful when the defender is playing very close, but behind the post player. After their initial move, the post player may look to score or pass. If they are inside the key, they may use a counter move, where they will shot fake and then either forward or reverse pivot to get past a defender. When using a pivot foot, the player will usually pivot on their heel, lifting their toes. The post player may also step off the block to receive the pass and then either face the basket or they may back in, dribbling with their back to the basket. This move involves a lot of contact, as a dribbler will attempt to hit the defender to move them backwards. The defender will most successfully be able to hold their ground if they initiate the contact, so it is a difficult situation for the referees to adjudicate. Over to you, Freddie. Well, before anybody has any questions, any other questions? No, everybody's following?
Yeah, we're good so far.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
Go ahead, Freddie.
Can you see my screen now? Am I shared?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm shared. Okay, great. I go to page 26, 126. Thank you very much, Jenny. Being a ball player, I know you still play some ball.
I try.
And I heard you say the player sit on the knee of the defensive player.
Yeah.
I was just trying to run that through my mind, actually. Okay, guys, that brings me now to game tempo. Tempo is very important for referees. It's very important for players. It's very important for coaches. And of course, that's what the fans like about the game of basketball. A nice up and down tempo. Of course, they like the high tempo. But be advised further that Mr. Julio Anaya and Mr. Kendall Henry will be speaking to this game tempo starting tomorrow evening into Tuesday. So my game tempo presentation really is going to be short. And then we will follow on with the game tempo presentation, the primary game tempo presentation tomorrow with Julio Anaya from Panama and Mr. Kendall Henry from the US Virgin Islands. That said, most teams will have a preference for a tempo, which the game is played, and tempo is related to the speed. But it is not the same throughout the game, meaning there's high tempo, low tempo, for whatever reason. Tempo can be affected by the factors such as whether a team walks the ball up the floor or attempts to quickly get from defense to offense. That's tempo. Factors such as the type of defense a team plays. Full court defense tends to quicken the tempo, whilst a full court zone defense tends to slow the tempo down. Teams often vary when they will play full court defense, some using it for a limited time or in response to a particular situation. When I coached a game many, many moons ago, one of the things is with respect to defense, if a team throw a full court press on me to reduce my tempo, I would respond in kind. And normally that would disrupt them. Like, hey, this guy, what is he doing here? So that was one of my strategy. I don't know if we have some coaches out there, they may want to employ that strategy. Factors such as foul trouble will often lead a coach to slow the tempo of a game or to reduce the number of possession without a particular player. Sometimes particular players are off the court, they get in foul trouble, and you want to slow the game down, run off some of the time so we can get that player back in the game without having to get fouled out. The next factor, how quickly a team takes the ball from the basket, steps out of bounds, and throw it back into play. When playing an opponent that wishes to inbound quickly, teams will attempt to interfere with the ball by crowding into the player that is trying to take the ball from the net, particularly hoping that the ball may hit them and bounce away. This is a sore point for referees, particularly at level 1 competition, coming down to the last moments of the game. After a made basket, Team A may attempt to stall the ball by standing right under the basket, so Team B cannot get the ball. Right? And so sometimes they just stand there and hope that that ball will hit them, and they would just nudge that ball into the crowd or nudge that ball into the sideline to reduce the tempo. The next area is when a team tends to shoot within its 24-second count, and also the type of shot taken in their offense. Of course, you got 21 seconds, 22 seconds to shoot the ball, or 18 seconds, 20 seconds. That means you only have a few more seconds to shoot the ball. In that case, the tempo of the game will change, and in most cases, it will speed up. Okay. For example, 3-point shots often quicken the tempo because they result in a long rebounds, which can trigger an opponent's fast break. Very true. Another factor is the relative advantage that a team may have against an opponent. A team that is taller may prefer a slower tempo, focusing on the post play, while a team that is smaller may prefer to run the ball, looking to generate layups against a slow opponent. I mean, if you're a Laker of the 80s, I don't know if any of you were around then. I would imagine so. The Lakers, they had a fast pace, a fast tempo game. Even though they had a big men, they would use their big men sparingly, and they would just continue to push that ball up and bring in the big men for a 1 or 2 minute play, and then they yank them out, and then that fast break, I mean, just continues. However, on the other hand, you had a team like Boston or Detroit that had some very big guys, solid guys, tall guys. And so they would play a more slower game, more banging game, and most of the plays would go into the low post, would start in the low and perhaps end on the outer perimeter. But the Lakers would, I mean, they would just total dominance in terms of transitioning the game. So you can see, sorry guys, I'm a Laker. So you're not a Laker, you can still be a Laker. Continuing, factors such as the players on the floor at a given time. Some combination of players will tend to be better situated to a certain tempo. We all realize that it's always trying to find that right chemistry for a fast-breaking team. Find the right chemistry for a good perimeter shooting team. Trying to find a chemistry for a shooting rebounding team, or a shooting transition team, or a pick and roll team. It's always trying to find that chemistry, and these different chemistry would certainly have an effect on the tempo of the game. The pre-game meeting between the officials and the coach can be a good way to gain information on the likely tempo of the game. The coach is likely to know both the tempo that their team prefers as well as what they expect the opposition to do. Of course, I use the term historical data. That's why you have these guys who go out and scout the teams. I know in time past when I was refereeing at the FIBA level, all of the referees would have to attend the first couple days of gameplay to get an idea of the coaches and how they're coaching and their behavior, get an idea of gameplay, get an idea of how teams play, fast break, slow game, get personal data on players, their behavior, how they play, etc. And so I thought that was a good thing. I don't know, I can't remember them doing it lately, but that was a good thing back in the day. Just trying to get historical data on these teams. Referees should discuss the upcoming game with their partners, as one of them may have previously officiated the team. I know Jenny is an active FIBA referee, and we may have one or two out there. And sometimes based on the type of game being played, or the type of nomination they would have received, even before they received certain nominations, and based on the games or the teams, they could sometimes tell or determine that they're going to be refereeing certain games. Like myself, when I, refereeing in the Bahamas, there are certain teams I know I'm going to be the referee to that game. All right, because in most cases they're looking for discipline. They're looking for persons who pretty much have a name, integrity of the game, etc., etc. And so often, hard-nosed teams, I would be the one to referee the game. And that is based on tempo, based on tempo and temperament of the players. Then, of course, teams may have set rules as to when they will change defense or offense. And these may be constant or may change from game to game, depending upon their opponent. Yes, I had an opportunity to play some college ball, never played international ball like some of you. And there are times after 3 minutes, the coach, we know that after 3 minutes on certain team, we're going to press. We know that after 12 minutes in the first half, we're going to go to the shooting game, etc., etc. These are some of the plans that we have. Teams may have set rules as to when they change the defense or offense. And then, of course, teams know that certain players, after 12, 15 minutes of play, they're going to get tired, and then they're going to start fouling. And it happens. So you have to change the nature of the game. So the team may have set rules as to when they will change the defense or offense. And these may be constant or may change from game to game depending upon their opponent. The rules themselves may also change. For example, a team may slow the tempo of their offense if an opponent has scored 3 continuous baskets, for example, unanswered basket. Of course, in most cases, you're going to have a what? Probably a timeout. Yeah? A lot of timeout. 3 3-pointers in a row. Big time timeout. So referee have to pay particularly close attention to these kinds of plays. So during the game, the coach has 3 basic opportunities to change tactics. And they will often use these to affect the tempo. What are these three basic opportunities? During substitution and changing matchups. For example, a coach may substitute a fast guard into the game to increase the tempo, or may take stars out of the game shortly before the end of a period to get an extra long rest. I mean, that's pretty much basketball 101. When doing this, they will often look to slow the tempo to reduce the number of possessions. That's because their big players out or their best players out, and so they want to make a substitution to change the matchup. And of course, timeouts. Teams go into a timeout, and I mean, the minute that timeout is blown, especially in the NBA, especially in the NCAA, when that timeout is blown, guys run out on the court within the team bench area and put the little chairs down, and the coaches just dash in there, their little X and O's, and they start talking. Something that everybody know where to go. All right, the starting 5 is in a position. All the other substitution are in a certain position. The coaches are in a position, and the coaches go to work with the X's and O's during the timeout. Timeouts. Coaches often call a timeout to attempt to break an opponent's momentum. Sometimes to gain momentum. All right, it breaks the opponent's momentum, and there will often be a change of tactic when a timeout is called. Sometimes to change the momentum, I mean to break it is to change it. All right, so you don't go into a timeout just to break a team momentum. Sometimes you want to up your own momentum by calling certain plays and working out certain plays. Next item is breaks between period. Of course, these are the interval of plays between the first and the second quarter. You have the interval of play 2 minutes, and then the halftime interval of play between the third and the fourth, and then any overtime. You have a couple minutes of interval of play. Breaks between period of play. These are the longer breaks, and particularly present an opportunity to rejig or change the rules to be applied for the rest of the game. It's very important for referees as well, because once you have these breaks, referees should be expecting that there's going to be a change, especially if a team is down and they go into the locker room or they go into that interval of play of 2 minutes. They're going to be strategizing, all right? Especially if a team have maybe a few players, good players who are in foul trouble, or play a team that has a couple injuries. So the referees must get a grip of these things and determine that if they have a few if they have a few injuries, they perhaps may want to slow the ball down. They may not want to play aggressive defense, and they certainly don't want to transition, which causes a lot of injuries. And so referees can take that kind of analysis in terms of refereeing the game. And then the list goes on. A particular time that is likely to require a change of tempo is the last few minutes of the game. Wow. Tempo change. The team that has the lead may look to slow the tempo and reduce the number of possessions left, while a team that is behind may look to quicken the tempo and increase the number of possessions. Of course, let's take football. I'm up by 10 points, up by 15 points, 3 minutes in the game. What you want to do? You want to stall. I mean, you want to eat away on that time. However, from down, I'm making quicker plays. All right. Of course, I'm playing for the and one. I'm playing to stop the clock and to have everything in my advantage. So if I'm stopping the clock, I'm literally playing for an and one plus stopping the clock and getting a free throw. I'm literally playing for that unsportsmanlike foul. I'm literally playing to foul that best player out of the game. These are the things I'm looking for if I'm down, which will change the dynamics of the game or change the tempo of the game. Quickening the tempo will usually involve extending defense and increasing the pressure to attempt to create turnovers. That's another one. And of course, when that happens, the referee got to realize that you're going to have a lot of contact. There are going to be a lot of skirmishes between players, trash talking, a little anger here and there. The fans are going to get involved in the game and possibly fights. And so these are the things the referee must anticipate. They must have an active mindset when faced with these kinds of dynamics. So quickening the tempo will usually involve extending defense and increasing the pressure to attempt to create turnovers. Teams may also use fouls to reduce the time their opponents spend in offense, although that must be balanced with the increase in their score that they may result from successful free throws. Yeah, you're fouling, but make sure I don't foul while the team is in the bonus, particularly coming down to the end of the game. And then, of course, a team may foul for a team to go into the bonus so they can get the ball. So if you go into the bonus and you shoot two, or you have two shots and you miss one, and I get the rebound and I come back and race the ball up the court and hit a three-pointer, and it was only down by 1 point, that strategy works. So tempo is, like they say in Spanish, muy importante in a basketball game. I turn now, any question, any comments? Any coaches wish to weigh in? Any players former players wish to weigh in on the game? Any referees? I know from time to time referees will be challenged, especially with fast tempo games. And even when we as instructors and commissioners put teams of referees together, all of these things we have to take into consideration, looking at the dynamics of, hey, there are referees who don't do too well in fast-paced and aggressive games. Just don't happen. All right. So all of these things you have to take into consideration even when you're planning out your game planning. Good. Continue, sir. Go right ahead.
Yeah, one thing we didn't mention in terms of the tempo, the pace of the game, that a lot of referees have to know the games they referee, and they might have to go and do an extra jog and work out before these games, because some games it's hard for the referees to keep up. I don't know about you, but they have some games here. These teams run so fast. Sometimes the referees need a timeout.
Boy, listen. I know Jenny and we're quite familiar with all of this. I could remember literally refereeing. I referee a national championship. All of the referees decide to boycott for some strange reason. It was like 4 referees. And I refereed 9 games back to back. And I know I lost about 15 pounds during that exercise. There was a time again I had 7 games. I mean, it just happens. Hence, the fitness level, you got to be prepared to go extra game. But at the international level, you don't have those kinds of challenges because you have X amount of referees, and it isn't like when you finish a game, you going home. All right, you actually go into your hotel room, jump in your jacuzzi, rehydrate, etc., and then go over your game management plan, etc. But I know what you speak from the local perspective, and so that's something you just have to manage. Now, to manage that, shipmate, is to get more referees. Yeah, you get more referees, then you won't have that kind of challenge. So it behooves all of us to bring one to keep one. I challenge everybody here: bring one to keep one. Clone yourself, and you'll see these kinds of challenges passing away. Any other comments? Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Wow, sounds good. Lovely. Okay. Are you ready to continue?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I forgot I had to unmute. Right, individual offensive skills. Layup footwork. The basic layup footwork simply stems from the traveling rule. Player catches the ball with their feet in the air. First foot lands, which is the pivot foot. Second foot lands, and then the player jumps off that foot towards the basket to shoot. The player is usually moving in a continuous direction. More experienced players only rely upon athleticism and intuition to be able to create shot opportunities. Many times, a move is spontaneous. However, there are some that have become more commonly seen. Different moves may initially appear to be a travel or may change where likely contact will occur and accordingly can be problematic for officials. The first one is the Eurostep. The Eurostep is an example of normal layup footwork that does look a little different. It is used to get past a defender. A dribbler first steps in one direction, which is in the diagram here, the blue dot, and then steps in the opposite direction, which is the red dot, past the player. The steps, particularly the first step, are often slow, and the player may move the ball from one side of their body to the other in a high arc to avoid defensive hands. If contact occurs on the first step, it is in quite a different location on the floor than if contact occurred on the second step. Lateral layup, outside foot, inside foot. Again, this is a traditional layup footwork. However, the movement looks quite different. Typically, a player is moving towards the baseline rather than directly to the basket, down the seam or side of the keyway. As they take their steps, they move laterally towards the basket. Blue dot representing their first step, which is in the first diagram, and the red dot the second step. This quick change of direction can lead to contact with their own defender as they step across the path or with a help defender. Attacking the basket defender. With the introduction of the no-charge circle, many coaches now instruct players to aggressively drive towards the defender that is standing within the circle and to seek a level of contact in the hope of drawing a foul. Jump shot and step through. This move utilizes different footwork to a traditional layup and is often incorrectly called as a traveling violation. First, the offensive player finishes their dribble with a jump stop, both feet hitting the ground at the same time. Provided that their feet are in the air when they pick up the ball, this means they now have a choice of pivot foot. The player then takes a step towards to move past the defender and jumps off that foot and lifts their pivot foot to shoot a layup. This is a legal movement, as the player may pick up their pivot foot if they either pass or shoot before the foot hits the ground. Players that are proficient at this movement cover a significant distance. Example, their last dribble may have been outside the three-point line, which may make it appear to be a traveling violation. Dribble, push dribble, or throw down dribble. The ball handling skills of players have improved greatly in recent years, and several defensive systems have been devised. Example, playing defense. Considering that it is now very hard for a single defender to contain a ball handler, like layups, several dribbling techniques have developed through the innovation of players and are now taught by coaches. Dribble. A push dribble is typically used when an offensive player faces a situation of moving past two defenders. Example, their own defender and a help. Instead of attempting to dribble past in a controlled fashion, the offensive player pushes or throws the ball between two defenders and then moves between them to continue their dribble. Because they are not directly controlling the ball, they are able to move their body through more easily. A throwdown dribble is a similar move, but occurs at the start of the dribble, typically. Offensive will fake to drive in one direction by taking a small step in that direction and keeping the pivot foot grounded. The defender reacts to stop them from moving in that direction. The offensive player throws the ball to the floor across their body to change the ball to the other side. The offensive player lifts their pivot foot to step past the defender and commence dribbling. Prior to the development of the throwdown dribble, players were taught to move or rip the ball to the other side of their body and then make a crossover step, i.e., move the foot that they took the initial step with when faking. This can be difficult when defenders close the space between them and the offensive player and particularly reach in to knock the ball away. Shooting off the dribble and jump shot. Shooting off the dribble. There are many situations in a game when a player will take a shot at the end of a dribble. Key to the success of the shot is the player being balanced as they stop forward momentum and convert an upward momentum as they jump to shoot. Players are encouraged to pick up the ball at the end of the dribble while their feet are in the air, and then they may use a jump stop, which is both feet land at the same time, or straight stop, one foot, and then the second stop, and then the second foot lands. With a jump stop, it can be difficult for the players to stop their forward momentum, and they will often jump forward as they shoot. Referees need to determine whether the defender was established in a position prior to the player jumping to shoot and then adjudicate any contact. The straight stop often allows the player to establish their balance better as the knee of the first leg bends to bring momentum down, and then the player jumps as their second foot touches the floor. Players will often pivot on their heel instead of their toe, which again assists with balance. This is permissible. The offensive player should move the non-dribbling hand to the ball as they pick up the ball. However, commonly the dribbler will move the ball across their body. Even a small amount of contact on the arm as the player is picking up the ball can have sufficient effect on the shot. The jump shot. A jump shot may occur at the end of a dribble, discussed above, or on catching the ball. Coaches encourage players to catch the ball with momentum and to take a small step as they receive it to create momentum. Some coaches prefer players to use a jump stop, jumping in the air as the ball is passed and landing on both feet, while others prefer a straight stop. So a straight stop is just mainly stepping into the shot and establishing a pivot foot early. If the player has feet on the floor when they catch the ball, this limits what they can do without dribbling, which is mainly about the straight stop. Over to you, Freddie.
Thank you very much. Am I still on the screen? Am I still on?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. Just for information, at the end of this lesson, I'm going to give you a PowerPoint presentation on coaches relationship, coaches referee relationship. I'm just going to give you the PowerPoint. It's pretty much self-explanatory. It's pretty long PowerPoint, but I believe you're gonna find it very interesting. And if you do, just let me know. All right, so after this, I'm gonna put that on the screen or give that to Patrick so he can push that out to you, to all of you. Having said that, just remember too that referees did not write this part of the manual. It was coaches, World Association of Basketball Coaches. They produce this basketball knowledge manual for us, as officials. And so what you're seeing here is what they wrote, what they're thinking of us. So having said that, I will just go right in to coach, referee, and player-referee relationships. So what does the coaches expect of us? Both players and coaches, and indeed spectators and media, assume that officials will officiate fairly, impartially, and to the best of their ability. Wow, that's powerful. Officiate fairly, impartially, and to the best of their ability. This is what they assume of us as officials. Know, understand, and consistently apply the rules of the game. And then understand the game. That's on the back end of it. That's where we have the challenges. Is knowing or understanding the game as we would have gone through in the last 2 days. This is a new dynamic for refereeing. And so we must have an understanding how the game is played in order to anticipate and analyze situation, in order to make the best call. That is known as having an active mindset as a referee. The first two of these expectations form the oath taken by a judge or official on behalf of all officials in the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games. The third expectation is somewhat problematic and is often the basis upon which coaches criticize referees. They don't understand the game, they would often say. They don't understand the game. They don't understand what we do as players, what we go through as coaches. This may arise simply because the coach disagrees with a call, but can also arise when a literal interpretation of the rule may not necessarily be the best call. For example, calling a travel violation in the backcourt when there is no defensive player. And this comes down to what? They call this, what do we call it now, Jenny? Officiating, psychology of officiating, preventative officiating. All right? And these guys know it. Team A is in the backcourt, A1 and A2. There's no Team B player in the backcourt. A1 bringing in the ball and steps on the line and passes the ball to A2. And beep, referee calls a throw-in violation. Any advantage gained? No. Team B was not placed at a disadvantage. Team A was not placed at a disadvantage. Why blow it? And these are the kinds of things that coaches throw in our faces, right? So, indeed, having a feel for the game is an asset for any official, both in terms of understanding how the game is played and the perspective of players and coaches and the pressure or pressures that they are under. Certainly agree with that. Coaches, players, and unofficial go through a lot of pressures, especially in big games, especially games that international games where teams are carrying their country flag. It's a lot of pressure bring to bear on players and coaches. And in professional leagues, this is where teams, coaches actually lose their jobs, and in few cases, players may be traded or lose their jobs as well. Coaches will also complain when they believe that decisions are not consistent. For example, significant contact being allowed at one end of the court, but not at the other. You always hear in the game, call it both ways, call it both ways. While this perception may arise because of the different perspective the coaches have, they are closer to one end of the court than the other. It can also arise if the officials are calling the game differently. Wow. Now, hence the importance of really balancing how we place officials on the court. This can be addressed by the officials having a productive pregame meeting and having a high level of dialogue between themselves during the game. During dead ball situation, during timeout situation, officials get together and they have in-game conference. That's something perhaps we need to develop a new concept, in-game conference. And that is very important to coaches. Sometimes when coaches see referees having these in-game conference, it tends to build a little bit more acceptance of them because they're saying, oh yeah, man, they saw that play. That's what they're discussing right now, right? Coaches also expect to be able to communicate with referees. To question why a call was made or to ask referees to pay attention to a specific situation of concern. We have to be careful with that. When you make these comments with respect to that, it should be unconditional. Can't say, okay, if I see it again, I'll call it. All right, you say, yeah, I'll take a look at it, but not if I see it again, I'll call it. Unconditional. Coaches would often say, oh, if they make the free throw, I want a timeout. You don't want a timeout or you don't want a time. Right? Continuing, the behavior of some coaches and how they communicate with officials is inappropriate. But officials should not fall into the trap of not communicating with coaches. And I know Ian and Alejandro would have done the package on communication. But the presentation I'm going to leave you with this evening, I would advise you to go home this evening and just look at it. It's good presentation, good PowerPoint presentation, fairly long, and you're going to enjoy it. So if you do enjoy it, please just say so. And I have to post it to recognize the persons who actually produce it. Some tips to follow when communicating with coaches. We went through some of these already. Introduce yourself. Introduce yourself before the game and try to establish a rapport with the coach. For example, ask how their season is going or what they expect the game to be like. All right. Sometimes this is not culturally accepted. And so you have to do your homework when dealing with this bullet. Be prepared to acknowledge when exceptional things happen. Funny things do happen during a game. Sometimes our players do exceptional things. And officials should be prepared to acknowledge when they do occur. One of the gray areas is goaltending and basket interference. Ball strikes a ring, the ball goes up, have a chance of entering the basket, a referee calls beep, while that ball has a chance of entering the basket, and you have like maybe 3 pairs of hands up there, and somebody touched the ball, and the ball goes in or something, and you don't see a uniform up there. All you see is hands. And so table officials are wondering, hey, did the ball go in? Did somebody touch the ball? Coaches are wondering whether it was an interference because you can't see it and it's hard to judge. And some of these things you have to be looking for, particularly at the end of the game when a shot is taken. Okay, tips. Speak to the coach. in a conversational tone and stand beside them, not in front of them. This area, to each his own. I guess this is something that coaches, they put this together so they don't like referees standing in front of them, I guess. Except that the coach has a different perspective and they may have seen the play differently. I agree. Speak to the coach during the breaks in play. If they raise something whilst the play is continuing, come back to them in the next break to discuss it. Be prepared to briefly explain a rule. And I stress the word briefly. Don't have a clinic. Be prepared to briefly explain a rule or to explain the reason for a call. All right? Now, there's some referee, they just take a delight in having clinics on the basketball court. All right? You're not there to prove how well you understand the rules or know all the different articles. Give a short, sharp explanation, and then you move on. Do not let the coach continually complain or repeatedly ask the same question. Right? Do not debate with the coach. Listen to their question. The big thing in communication is listening. Big challenge for us as referees, man. We do not listen. Listen to the coach. Give whatever explanation is required or acknowledge that you will look at it. Unconditional. Unconditional. And then return to the game. Players' expectation, and then we'll be finished. Players' expectation. Players mostly have the same expectation as coaches do. Wanting the officials to be consistent, fair, and to let the players decide the outcome of the game. Our coaches wrote this. At times, players may become upset, which may be a decision made by a referee, but equally may be about their own performance or that of a teammate. Officials should judge whether behavior is aimed at the referee and act if it is, but show leniency if it isn't. Very powerful there. Officials should also be precise when making calls. Like I often say, be deliberately right or deliberately wrong, but be deliberate. Officials should also be precise when making calls. For example, if illegal contact is made with the defender's hip, do not call it an illegal use of hands. All right? Whilst the result is the same regardless of which foul is called, it is frustrating for the players if the wrong foul is called. Seeing it often. A big challenge for referees. Preventative officiating, we mentioned that a few minutes ago. Preventative officiating is certainly encouraged. For example, telling the player hands off, right? Hey, watch your knees into the guy's thigh, man. That kind of stuff. Hey, I seen that. You're holding the jersey. Leave the player. Okay? Continue to do that. I'm forced to call a technical foul or unsportsmanlike foul. Preventative officiating is certainly encouraged. However, many players will continue to do it for as long as the referee continues to provide a warning. Accordingly, referees should warn, but then be prepared to call if the behavior persists. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so kindly. We will continue with game tempo tomorrow with Julio and I from Panama, Mr. Ken Henry from the U.S. Virgin Islands. We trust that everybody will tune in accordingly. Any questions? Any comments, questions, concerns? I know we pushed a lot of information out. We did not. Go right ahead.
Patrick, I'm about to ask you a question in the group chat about 3-on-3.
Right ahead. How do you get that?
Yes.
Okay. Right ahead, Robinson.
Question for Patrick, real quick. What role do I choose for tomorrow for the 3-on-3?
Well, what role are you playing in your country within
I have no idea. They just notified us like 2 days ago.
what
So I
country
don't.
are you from?
It's USVI.
Okay. April provided me a bunch of names. I did see 2 Robinsons, but
Okay, yeah, I'm on there.
okay. So I'm not sure on your role, but you are registered already.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then never mind.
I have to register. In short order. Hi, Flo.
If I may ask a follow-up question, please.
Yes, please.
Same question to Mr. Patrick on that. Leona from Guyana. I think I've registered as well, and now I'm just thinking, how am I going to do it? The 3-on-3 and this tomorrow.
What time is 3-on-3, buddy?
It starts at 6 p.m.
Oh yeah, you'll be all right.
Okay.
You'll be all right. You'll be all right, Leona.
In any essence, both sessions will be recorded, so you'll have an opportunity to review it at a later time.
Yeah.
And you send the link, Patrick, to everybody.
Yeah, all those who were registered, they will receive. It's automatically set that that will go out at midnight tonight.
Got it. Thank you, Patrick.
You have some time. Yeah, you have time. Yeah.
We have a question here.
Yeah.
The question is, how does a coach who is also a referee deal with a ref who is not calling the game properly?
Can you deal with that one, man? Oh, goodness. You deal with that.
Opinion on it? You have to respect the official when they're doing their job. Although you may not think they're calling the game properly, that official may be doing the best job that they can in the characteristics that Freddie pointed out earlier that coaches expect. You just got to adjust your coaching to suit the type of game that is being played and is being officiated on the floor. You don't like everything that referees blow or that they do. Referees are human beings as well. But you being a fellow official, if you're not having, in another coach's opinion, a good game, you would not want the coach to chastise you or disrespect you or, curse you, call you, stuff like that. So you have to respect the official while they're doing their job, and I would suggest you adjust your coaching. Talk to your players, try to change the mentality of the players to play harder, play through contact if you don't think that the referees are blowing what you think should be blown. Let the players adjust their attitudes and their mentality towards the game. They'll try to fight as hard as possible, play as hard as possible within the rules of the game. But you have to respect the official because you yourself would want respect. Good game or bad game.
Patrick, can I share the screen now? Can I share the PowerPoint presentation so you could push it out? Or just give it to you later and you could push it out to them. Because what I wanted to do is recognize the persons who produced it as a teaching aid, and then you could push it out. That'd be all right? You hear me, Pat? You hear me?
Yes, Freddie. Fine.
Yeah, so let me just share it and push it out there. Let's see. Oh, shoot. Okay. All right. Sorry for taking up so much of you guys' time. All right. Okay, I just want to recognize Mr. Morgan Monroe producing this PowerPoint presentation, 2009 actually, and to all of our participants, and trust that they would enjoy it. I think it has a lot of good information in it. You're going to learn a lot from it. That's good enough? It's long. It's very long, guys. There we go. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for putting up with us on this Sunday. I hope you had enough knowledge to take away and take back to the sport and be able to officiate with high level and high confidence. Please join us again tomorrow at 7 for another edition of the CBC Referees Online Training Program. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Good night.